one of the experiences I had several times over, because I would lead discussions at Tikkun Leil Shvuot about commandment. And I wanted to encourage people to speak about their own relationship to commandment. And it was those discussions which made such an impact on me that I realized the Mitzvah Initiative had to start with discussions of that sort. So you can go through in your own mind what you or those you know would say. But I would ask members of the congregation, for example, what is the source of mitzvah to you? What commands you? And I can see in my mind's eye a woman who was very close to our family. She acted as the surrogate grandmother to our kids because our kids' real grandparents were on the East Coast, and her real grandchildren were in Israel. So she acted as surrogate grandparent for my kids and some others, and she said, conscience. Conscience is the source of commandment for me. I said, not God? She said, conscience. Other people might have said that God speaks to them through conscience. She didn't say that, but other people did say that. There are people in the congregation who said that Torah is the source of obligation to them. Torah in the sense that for whatever historical chain of events, it goes back to Moses at Sinai in some fashion, and they regard Torah as the source of their authority. It quickly became apparent that there were people who believed that the Jewish community was their authority. They have responsibilities as members of a community. The way I elicit this from people is I say to them, as you can do with Jews who are my age and older, do you remember 1967? I remember in 1967 that friends of my parents, members of my congregation in Philadelphia, took out second mortgages on their house to raise money to send to Israel. Did they do so because God told them to? Well, maybe a few did, but most of them didn't. They acted out of responsibility to the Jewish people. They may have acted out of a sense of loyalty to their own ancestors, that finally the Jewish people gets this state, and damn it if we're going to sit around and let it be destroyed without doing everything we can to save it. Some sense like that, but it's not directly Torah Sinai. There's some other sense of responsibility. If you look at Jews and you talk to them, as we did in the Jew Within, people do feel responsibility to their parents, their grandparents, their ancestors. They're carrying on a long tradition. There's this famous line, I'm not going to let the chain stop with me. Right? I'm not going to be the last link in the chain of the generations. That's a source of obligation. And then there was the brilliant sermon given by my rabbi in Palo Alto one day, Rabbi Sarah Graff, after she and her husband Scott had their first child. And Sarah said, parenthood has taught me to see mitzvah differently. And I went up to her afterwards and said, Sarah, this is one of the most magnificent sermons, but this reinforced my sense that you've got to teach Jews about mitzvah differently, because what she said was, when you're a parent, your child cries out in the middle of the night. And she said, I said to Scott, you go. And he says to me, no, you go. In other words, we both want to sleep. But when one of us goes to the baby, it's not because of some Kantian notion of abstract duty that we're doing the right thing. We love this child more than anything on earth. And yes, we want to sleep. But we get up and take care of this child because we love this child. And see, then you understand mitzvah as love in the way the rabbis, and I think the prophets, wanted us to understand mitzvah as love between God and Israel.